The late 1960s were a time of great change in America. It was an era of hope, but also of deep unrest. In Northern California, amidst the flower children and social revolution, a different kind of darkness began to stir. It arrived without warning, a phantom who would stalk the lonely roads and quiet places of the Bay Area. This figure would become a boogeyman, a name whispered in fear for decades to come. He was a killer who did not just want to murder, he wanted fame. He craved the spotlight, demanding that the entire world see his work and tremble at his name. He would call himself the Zodiac. This is the story of his reign of terror, a puzzle I have spent a lifetime trying to piece together from the fragments he left behind. His story is not just one of crime, but one of communication. The Zodiac Killer was unlike anyone who had come before him. He was a performer, and the murders were his stage. He reached out from the shadows through the very newspapers that reported on his horrific acts. He sent letters to the press, to the police, to prominent lawyers, creating a one-sided conversation with a terrified public. In these letters, he would confess to his crimes, provide details only the killer could know, and threaten more violence if his demands were not met. He was a puppeteer pulling the strings of an entire region's anxiety, and for a long time we all danced to his tune. He wanted to be known, to be feared, and most of all to be remembered. The name Zodiac itself was a brand he created. He signed his cryptic letters with a cross-circle symbol, a mark that would become as infamous as the swastika. This symbol appeared on his letters and was even found etched into a victim's car door. It represented his identity, a mask for the faceless man behind the gun and the knife. He was telling us that he was more than a mere man. He was a cosmic force, a dealer of fate whose cycle of death could not be stopped. The name and the symbol were tools of terror, designed to elevate a common murderer into a mythological figure of pure evil. What made his emergence so terrifying was its randomness. His victims were ordinary people, teenagers on a date, a young couple enjoying a picnic, a cab driver doing his job. There was no clear motive like robbery or personal revenge. The Zodiac seemed to kill for the sheer sport of it. Choosing his victims as a hunter might choose his prey. This unpredictability paralyzed the community with fear. Anyone could be next. The Zodiac's reign of terror began on a cold, dark night. It was December 20th, 1968. Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday were on their first date. They parked their car in a remote lover's lane, Lake Herman Road, near the edge of Vallejo, California. It was a quiet, isolated spot, the kind of place where teenagers went for a moment of privacy. But that night, another car pulled up beside them. A man got out armed with a .22 caliber pistol. He ordered the young couple out of their car. David was shot once in the head, killed instantly. Betty Lou tried to run, a desperate flight for her life. She was shot 5 times in the back. She didn't make it. There were no witnesses, no clear motive, just 2 young lives extinguished in the darkness. For months, the case went cold. The brutal double murder baffled the Solano County Sheriff's Office. It seemed like a senseless, motiveless act of violence. Then, more than 6 months later, the killer struck again. It was the night of July 4th, 1969. Darlene Farron Michael Mago parked at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, only a few miles from the first crime scene. As they sat in their car, another vehicle pulled up and blocked their exit. A man approached with a flashlight and a 9mm Luger pistol. He walked to the passenger side window and opened fire without saying a word. Michael was hit in the face, neck, chest. Darlene was shot multiple times. The killer then walked away but returned to fire several more shots into the car to ensure they were dead. This time, however, the killer did something different. He wanted credit for his work. Shortly after midnight, on July 5th, a man called the Vallejo Police Department. The dispatcher answered,
"I wish to report a murder. If you will go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway to the public park, you will find kids in a brown car.
They were shot with a 9mm Luger.
I also killed those kids last year."
The killer was connecting the crimes himself. Miraculously, Michael Mago survived the attack. He was able to give police the first description of the man who shot them, but it was a fleeting glimpse in the dark. Vallejo Police Sketch Description. The attack at Blue Rock Springs was a turning point. It marked the moment a murderer began his transformation into the Zodiac. After the shootings in Vallejo, the Zodiac changed his methods. He seemed to be growing bolder, more theatrical. His next attack was in broad daylight, in a place filled with people. On September 27, 1969, college students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were picnicking on a quiet peninsula at Lake Berryessa in Napa County. It was a beautiful, sunny afternoon. As they relaxed on their blanket, they saw a man emerge from behind the trees. He was wearing a strange and terrifying costume. A black executioner-style hood, clip-on sunglasses over the eye holes, a bib-like garment on his chest decorated with the cross-circle symbol. He was holding a gun. He told them he was an escaped convict from a prison in Montana and needed their car and money to get to Mexico. The man's calm demeanor was unsettling. He had Brian tie up Cecilia with pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline, then he tied up Brian. The couple remained cooperative, believing it was just a robbery. Bound and helpless on the ground, his true intentions became horrifyingly clear. He put the gun away and pulled out a long, double-edged knife.
I'm gonna have to stab you people.
Without another word, he stabbed Brian 6 times in the back. He then turned to Cecilia and stabbed her 10 times as she writhed in pain. The attack was savage and personal, a stark departure from the detached shootings before. He was no longer just a killer, he was a predator enjoying the terror of his prey. After the frenzied attack, the killer walked calmly back to Brian's car. He drew his crossed circle symbol on the car door with a black marker. Beneath it he wrote dates: Vallejo, December 20th, 68, July 4th, 69, September 27th, 69, 6:30 by knife. He was keeping score, creating a public record of his atrocities. He wanted everyone to know the gunman in Vallejo was the same man who used a knife at Lake Berryessa. He varied his methods to show versatility and frustrate police profiling. The vandalism was a defiant message to the authorities. Miraculously, Brian Hartnell survived his wounds. He provided investigators with a detailed account and descriptions. Cecilia Shepard clung to life for 2 days before dying in hospital. Before she died, she gave a description of the attacker to a deputy. The Zodiac followed up with a taunting phone call to Napa PD, calm and measured. He reported the double murder, directed police to the scene, and claimed responsibility. The game was escalating. The hooded man at Lake Berryessa was the Zodiac's most terrifying incarnation yet. Just 2 weeks after the horror at Lake Berryessa, the Zodiac Killer brought his terror into the heart of a major city. On the night of October 11, 1969, a man hailed a cab driven by Paul Stine in San Francisco's Theater District. The passenger asked to be taken to the intersection of Washington and Maple Streets in the wealthy neighborhood of Presidio Heights. However, for reasons unknown, Stine drove 1 block past the destination to Washington and Cherry. It was there that the passenger shot the 29-year-old cab driver once in the head with a 9mm pistol, killing him instantly. The motive was not robbery in the traditional sense. The killer was there to take a trophy and create another public spectacle. After shooting Stine, the killer took his wallet and his car keys. More chillingly, he used a knife to cut away a large piece of Stine's blood-soaked shirt, suggesting he was collecting souvenirs from his crimes. Across the street, several teenagers at a party saw the man in the cab and, thinking it was a robbery, called the police. The most prominent suspect was Arthur Lee Allen, a former elementary school teacher. Allen was a deeply troubled man with a history of disturbing behavior. He was fired for misconduct with students, he had a fixation on weapons, and a fixation on explosives. He was interviewed by police in 1971 and became a prime suspect. He owned a Zodiac brand watch, the same type of ammunition used in the first attacks. He wore the same shoe size as a print found at Lake Berryessa. The Zodiac case remains officially unsolved, and that is a large part of why it continues to fascinate and haunt us. He is the ultimate boogeyman, a killer who emerged from the shadows, committed a series of horrifying crimes, and then vanished without a trace. The ghost of the Zodiac walks among us, a chilling, everlasting riddle.